What's up everybody, my name is Alan with Study Sound Audio and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how to program your guitar MIDI to sound more realistic. So recently I reached out to Keyan Houshmand. He's a guitar YouTuber and I asked him if he would make a video showcasing Axer for us. He kindly agreed and he made a really sick video showing how he programmed a riff and used Axer and all VST instruments. If you want to check out Keyan's video for that, I'll leave a link in the description for you below. One thing I noticed in Keyan's video is he mentioned that he's new to programming guitar MIDI. Much like a lot of you guys are probably new to programming guitar MIDI as well, so I figured I'd make this video showing you guys what he did in his video and what I would do differently. First off, let me just say the riff he had in his video is really sick and we're really happy with the way that he was showcasing Axer, but I noticed that there was a few things that I would do differently. So first I'm going to show you Keyan's riff and what he did, and then I'll show you what I did with the same exact MIDI. We'll then dive into a session and I'll show you exactly what I did differently. All right, so first up is Keyan's riff. Let's check it out.
So once we put all of these instruments together, all these VSTs that are not me playing or anyone else playing, all these fake instruments together, this is what it sounds like, and this is what you can come up with in a demo song.
Pretty sick. Okay, so here is my version, the same exact MIDI, just with my key switches and my changes to make it sound more realistic. Okay, there you have it. There's one thing that I noticed in the comment section that people said more than once was, it sounds good, but the lead sounds like MIDI. And I completely agree. Everything else sounds pretty believable. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. So I actually reached out to Keyan and asked him if he could provide me with the MIDI so I can make this video. He's really cool about it. He gave me the MIDI. I did change up a couple of things. I made some changes to the rhythm guitar, the lead guitar, and then a couple of tweaks on the drums just because they didn't convert over exactly. Let's go over it. Let's dive in. Okay, so first off, we have the rhythm guitars. First, I'm going to show you Keyan's rhythm guitar. All right, so I noticed something right off the bat is he's not using a lot of the velocity layers. Now we have 3 different velocity layers. The lower register, I think, is in like 42 and below, and then 43 to like 84, I believe, is the middle, and then 85 to 127 are the more aggressive samples. He's staying pretty much within the more aggressive samples, so that's something to keep in mind. There's 3 different velocity layers, which means they're completely different samples. Whenever I'm programming MIDI, I make sure to utilize that. You don't want everything hitting at 127 or the same velocities. You want things kind of change up a little bit to give it that more realistic feel. When he's using his key switches down here, he's got them sort of like latched, which you don't need to do that. You just need to program the key switch right when the note starts, and it doesn't matter how long your key switch note is. What I do is I literally just do like a 16th note and program the key switch right underneath the note, and then you're good. For as long as the note rings out, this key switch will affect it. Essentially, you don't have to latch it or whatever. I think that's what it is. He did that, but that's fine. That's not an issue. He's really doing minimal key switching here. I think he has a slide, and then he has a palm mute, and then another palm mute. So he's actually programming palm mute for each hit right here, and he didn't need to do that. He actually would just leave this key switch out because this key switch is going to affect everything after it until you change the key switch. There's a couple of places where he did that, which is fine. I know Keyan mentioned that he's new to programming guitar MIDI, and that's why I'm making this video, to show you guys how I go about doing it. So let's listen real quick. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing right off the bat is the pick attack is very aggressive. Now with the Axer library, the pick attack is very strong. This guy right here, like you really don't have to move it up very much for it to affect the notes. Unless you're going for a really robotic picked sound, then I would leave this pretty much at 0.16. And his was at 0.50. So I don't know if that's the way he had it whenever he programmed it, but when Keyan was talking about the guitars, I'm not sure if he's aware that we have two different presets, but there are two different presets for the guitars. So there's guitar 1 and guitar 2, and I think he was using guitar 1 for both rhythms and both leads. So if you do that, you're going to run into some phasing issues and it's going to be weird. So that's why we have the guitar 1 and guitar 2 presets. So you can use guitar 1 for left, guitar 2 for right, and then sometimes I just use guitar 2 for the leads. Guitar 1 and guitar 2 are completely different samples from each other. So it's ultimately like having two different plugins. That's one thing I noticed in this video as well. So make sure you're using guitar 1 and guitar 2. So his MIDI sounds good, but definitely the pick attack is very strong. And then I'm noticing he's not using much of the velocity layers. Also, what I'm seeing is he's not using the tap key switch, which also doubles as the hammer-on pull-off key switch. Because essentially that's what a hammer-on pull-off is a tap. So you're going to use your tap key switch for your hammer-ons and your pull-offs. He didn't use any of the tap key switch for that. And maybe that's because of the way that he wanted to program the riff. But how I see it, how I perceived it as these sorts of notes right here, that sounds like a hammer-on pull-off to me. So that's what I did there. And then some of the palm mutes, I'll show you what I did differently. Let's hear his one more time, and then I'm going to show you what mine sounds like soloed. So it sounds okay. So here's my version. So first thing I notice is that pick attack is definitely a lot less prominent in there. Also, the hammer-on pull-offs sound a lot better. When we go over to the palm mute part right here, so I'm using the different velocity layers to change those up. One thing that I noticed that Keyan did that was really cool that everyone should be doing is staggering your chords or your strokes, because he's doing a palm mute sort of thing or a chord, and he had the first note, which is going to be your low string, and then the next string is slightly staggered away, and then the third note that you're hitting is staggered a little further away from that. That's how you would play it in real life, so that's the way you should program it. I feel like a lot of people, when they just get into MIDI, they're programming everything to the grid and using one velocity the whole time. So you're going to want to definitely change up your velocities and stagger your notes if you're doing chords or palm mutes or anything like that. We're staggering those strings. Also, what I like to do is for the second and the third string that you're hitting, I change those notes to a different velocity, which I have them within the second velocity layer, and it's going to be 84. That first string is sitting at 106 is where he had it, I guess. They're all different samples, of course, but it's a different set of samples. That way you don't run into phasing issues if you program two guitars, like guitar left and guitar right. And then I'm utilizing a little bit more of the key switching. So I think I kept the slide that he had there in the beginning, but immediately after it, I programmed a tap key switch. And the tap is going for this note and the note after it, because this one key switch affects both those notes until I change the key switch again. And then I change it to a palm mute downstroke for these two notes. Dun, 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 dun. So imagine if you playing that in real life, that would be a down kind of thing. So I kept it on the 16, the palm mute downstroke. The one after that is, I think it's a slide up slow. So I imagine when you're playing that part, you're doing like a short little legato slide. Dun, dun, dun. Within that, I have a articulation. It's going to be a left-hand slide noise, which for me in Reaper is G sharp -1, MIDI note 20. So I put that between both of those notes, so it'll give you the illusion of a slide there. It's these little subtleties that make a big snowball difference in the ending production. So anytime he goes up like two notes, I'm assuming that's a slide. So Add the left-hand slide there and the tap key switch. Even though you're not tapping to that note, it gives you that note without any pick attack because all of the tap samples do not have pick attack built in. So that's pretty much it for the rhythm guitars because the riff kind of repeats itself. Let me let you hear what it sounds like with guitar left and right together. See how you can hear those like left-hand slide noises in between some of the notes? That's what gives it that more realistic feel. And that's the difference between my rhythm MIDI and Keyan's rhythm MIDI. Nothing against Keyan and his programming skills. I just noticed that, he said he was new to programming guitar MIDI, and I figured this would help you guys out as well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the lead. So he provided 2 different MIDIs for the lead. He had a lead layer and then just a regular lead. So the main lead was the one that you guys said that sounded fake. And I agree. So let's listen to that real quick. Okay, now let's listen to my version. Okay, a little bit of a difference there. The reason why it sounds a lot different is because I don't know if Keyan meant to do this, but he just used one key switch for that entire lead, which was a tap key switch. Yeah, as you can see, everything's pretty even. I went and redid all of that, changed up some stuff with different velocity layers, and also used different key switches. Because when I heard it, maybe he was going for a tap riff, but when I heard it, I was hearing more of like a picking sort of sound with some dissonant chords, especially during this part right here. That part to me sounded like it should be like strummed out chords on top of each other. So that's exactly what I did. So if we go into my MIDI here, these are all the key switches. You can see that I'm using a lot more. There's a little bit of differentiation in some of like the more frilly parts, like the hammer on pull off stuff. The one part that I said that sounds like it should be more like a chord, like a dissonant chord rather than a tap, I actually just extended the notes over each other so that they would ring out. I'm using those different velocity layers, and I'm also using those left-hand slide noises and slide up key switches, just like I did in the rhythm riff. It definitely sounds a little fake there when it gets into the frilly parts. And the reason being is because they're all such high velocity. Now, what if we were to turn them all pretty much down? Okay, they sound a little more believable there. Let's try to do that to these other ones here. Okay, that sounds a lot better. So that's one thing you can do is the lower velocities, like 42 and below, are going to be the really, really soft hits. You're going to get a little bit of pick attack, not very much. They're very lightly played, so you're going to get a more realistic sound with those samples, especially with clean guitars. So if you're working with clean guitars, I highly advise you use velocities 42 and below. That's for the second part of the lead. The first part of the lead, I changed up. I hope, Keyan, please don't be mad at me, dude. I kind of changed it up a little bit because I was hearing more of like a tremolo picked sort of lead with a lot of effect on it. He had it just, I think, 16th notes just down picked. And I think I had more of like the 32nd note kind of feel, like tremolo pick. So let's hear the beginning. All right, so I kind of dialed back on the effects a little bit right after, like when it kicks into the actual main lead.
the droney lead part, I actually did a lot here using a lot of different velocity layers. As you can see, I'm giving it that sort of tremolo pick feel where you're doing like the first pick is going to be the hardest and then the other three are kind of lightly picked, like so here's what that sounds like. I think it sounds cool with it all kind of droney. I added slightly different booms and swells and things like that. I think he added a lot of those in there. He didn't send me those, so I kind of used my own. Some cymbal swells and reverse snares and 808s. This is what the final result sounds like. Sounds pretty good. If somebody showed me a demo of this, the way it sounds right here, I would not be able to tell. But good news, we have an update coming out this month in October with forced strings. So what that means is you're going to be able to get the exact tonality for whatever string you're using on your guitar. It's been a very lengthy and long process to get this working and sounding right. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that in your email. If you purchased Axer, you get a free update for this. Be sure to look out in your email for an update in October. And we're going to also have stereo guitars in one preset with some other cool features and stuff too. So that's something to look forward to. Yeah, I think if I heard this, if a band member was like, hey, check out this demo, I wouldn't be able to tell, to be honest with you. I think Keyan did an amazing job. He wrote a really sick riff. So thank you, Keyan, for doing that for us. Go subscribe to his channel. Go check out his video if you haven't already. And by the way, I'm not making this video to bash what he did. I'm literally just trying to help you guys get the most out of Axer, because I understand that programming guitar MIDI is kind of a new thing and people are still learning how to do it right. And I'm trying to help pioneer that into a new era of songwriting. On this channel, we're trying to make as much content as we can about this to teach you guys the best ways to use Axer. Thanks for watching the video, and be sure to like this video, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.